Discover the extraordinary fragrance Ariana Grande REM Cherry Eclipse. Delight in black cherry jubilee, sugared honeysuckle, marshmallow meringue, and glowing amber. Get the perfect fragrance. Ariana Grande's REM Cherry Eclipse, exclusively at Ulta Beauty.
And now, your daily dose of debate, breaking news, and uncensored views. This is the Michael Medved Show.
And another great day in this greatest nation on God's green earth. Another great week, almost certainly, because the week begins with the end of the government shutdown, which is something that I had predicted, hoped for, wished for, spoken for, and now it seems to be on the way. The Senate has taken a key step toward reopening the government as lawmakers push to end the longest shutdown in U.S. history in a 60-40 vote yesterday, Sunday. 8 Senate Democrats courageously crossed party lines and reached a deal with Republicans, a very sensible deal, the right way to go. It reached a deal with Republicans, the 8 Senate Democrats, to end the stalemate in exchange for a future vote on extending health care subsidies. In other words, this does not solve all of the disputes, but it puts them off while it sends the government back to work. Despite sharp criticism from some top Democrats, the centrist bloc, these 8 Democratic senators, 8 of the 47 Democrats in the U.S. Senate, defended the move to reopen the government without achieving the party's chief demand, which is securing billions of dollars in health care tax credits. Still, the path to ending the shutdown remains uncertain. Any senator can delay consideration of the package for several days. It must also clear the House before reaching the desk of President Trump, where he is expected to provide his signature. NBC is reporting that Mike Johnson urges House members to return to D.C. They should have been there all along for a shutdown vote. The House Speaker said he would issue an official 36-hour notice before votes in the chamber after the final Senate vote on a deal to end the shutdown. Now, part of what this means is it moves the deadline of everything into the beginning of next year, into January. And that gives people time to work out some final deal on the health care tax credits, which really have to do with the continuation of Obamacare. And this has led to a very angry reaction by Chuck Schumer. He was on the Senate floor, and I believe that this kind of ranting and, yes, raving is not useful, is not constructive, especially when the overwhelming reaction of people across the country is going to be, thank goodness people now will be getting their food who have been waiting on this in terms of the SNAP program. There is an assurance that people who have had their salaries withheld, who haven't been paid regularly, including people in our military and who are working in ICE and putting themselves at some risk, that all of these people will be getting their salaries eventually. It may take a while. But for Chuck Schumer, that includes him. But he's still angry about it. I mean, really angry. He sounds like this, clips 11.
We asked President Trump to step in and meet with us to deliver lower health care for Americans, and instead, Donald Trump has taken the American people hostage, from cutting off food, aid to hungry families and vets and seniors and kids, to manufacturing flight cancellations, to cutting off home heating aid, while he builds a $1 billion ballroom with gold-plated toilets. Therefore, Therefore, I must vote no. This health care crisis is so severe, so urgent, so devastating for families back home that I cannot in good faith support this CR that fails to address the health care crisis. But let me be clear, however this vote turns out, this fight will and must continue. Democrats must fight because of millions of families will lose health care coverage. We must fight because children who are dying of cancer will not get health care coverage. We must fight.
Okay, the idea is all these things he's fighting for are basically achieved by this compromise. The Senate vote was 60-40 to advance this bipartisan deal to end the longest government shutdown in U.S. history. 8 Democrats broke with their party leadership. And part of what's going on with Chuck Schumer is the last time they had a potential shutdown, they didn't get to it because Chuck Schumer compromised in putting the confrontation off. And there were people in the extreme left wing of his party, people who were part of that progressive caucus, who were angry with him because he compromised. So this time, no compromise. This time, he's going to do his Trump imitation, fight, fight, fight. And he isn't even wounded. I mean, remember Trump, of course, famous for reacting that way after an attempted assassination. The deal that is being made fully funds the SNAP program through September, and meaning that they are paying off some of this money that was forwarded by the states. It does not extend the Affordable Care Act subsidies, but as I understand what this deal reflects is a commitment to have an open vote on those subsidies sometime before January. The 8 Democrats who joined the Republicans and are allowing us to escape this national nightmare, and particularly for people who are talking about plane travel, it has become a national nightmare. Thank God there's been no accident. But imagine what this does to people's schedules, to people's well-being, to their sense of relying on a sane, functioning government. The 8 Democrats who voted to deliver us from this particular evil are Catherine Cortez Masto of Nevada, Jackie Rosen of Nevada, Dick Durbin of Illinois, the number 2 ranking Democrat in the Senate, just right behind Chuck Schumer, John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who has been against the government shutdown from the beginning, Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire, Jean Shaheen of New Hampshire, Angus King, an independent who caucuses with Democrats. He's a former governor of Maine. A number of people have pointed out that a number of the people who are voted with the Republicans on this are people who themselves have been governors and have experience of governors and therefore do not take easily to the games that have been played with the funding of the federal government and with a lot of the costs, including some of the SNAP payments, being pushed back on the states. Meanwhile, today is, believe it or not, the 50th anniversary of what John Bolton, who was our former ambassador to the UN, calls the most humiliating, embarrassing, and shameful day in the whole history of that international organization. What was it that happened 50 years ago today that was so terrible for the United Nations, and by the way, continues to be a problem for the UN and for countries around the world? We will get to that and to more when the day that the hope for the shutdown nightmare to be over arrives brighter than before. We will be right back on the Medved Show.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Carvana lets you buy your next car on your terms. Explore a massive inventory online, filter for what matters, and find your perfect match. Then choose delivery to your home or pick it up at one of Carvana's iconic car vending machines. Every car also comes with a 7-day money-back guarantee, so you can make sure it's the right fit. Buy your car on Carvana. Delivery or pickup fees may apply. Limitations and exclusions may apply. See our 7-day return policy at Carvana.com.
Carvana.
And right now there is new conversation about a Trump giveaway. And this is not a Trump organization giveaway. It's not from any of his private merchandise. It's a giveaway right from the federal treasury. Is it a good idea for President Trump to send every American, I assume that includes people like my 5-week-old grandson. I mean, he's an American too. Not that articulate yet, but he will have his time. Does he get $2,000? President Trump talking about sending every American $2,000. Why? He says because that will help get people to support his tariffs, because that money will come to help people pay for the tariffs that people have on coffee, where the price of coffee has gone up really spectacularly, and everything else that you want to buy. So what's the, if this takes away, it is funded by what he claims that we're going to take in from collecting money on the tariffs, it would have to reach $680 billion. That's close to $1 trillion. Free checks is not a terrific conservative idea. In fact, it's not a conservative idea at all. Yesterday, President Trump, while members of the Senate were meeting with one another and having ultimately fairly successful negotiations to try to get the 60 votes they needed to end the government shutdown, they took a vote yesterday evening. And 60 Democrats gave them the votes they needed. Okay. Trump spent the day at the Washington Commanders game. And I assume that he was rooting for the Commanders, the Washington team, even though he has spoken out, he wants them to change their name back to the Redskins, which... Again, I'm not sure the football team wants to do that. This is a franchise that is worth a lot of money, despite the fact that the game that the president was at, well, number one, he was booed lustily at the Commanders game when he was announced and he was there. Boo! Okay, and partially he wants the stadium to be renamed after him. They're building a big new stadium that is supposed to be done by 2030, so 5 years from now. And Trump wants the stadium named after him. The White House said yesterday it would be beautiful if the Washington Commanders NFL team named their planned stadium in the nation's capital after President Donald J. Trump. That statement comes after ESPN reported that there may have been back-channel talks between the White House and the Washington Commanders ownership group in which Trump expressed interest in having the stadium named after him. I think this is unlikely. No, the Cleveland Guardians are not going to name any kind of facility after the two members of the Cleveland Guardians pitching staff who were arrested. And they were arrested because they apparently helped to cooperate with some gambling cheaters who were putting money on what kind of pitch they would throw, whether it be a ball or a strike, whether it would be a curveball or a slider or whatever it would happen to be. Apparently, you can make a lot of money, hundreds of thousands of dollars in betting, especially if you have people on the mound who are willing to throw away a pitch or two in order to help you collect your bet that they get part of. The whole thing is shameful. And again, it hurts baseball, which is one of the institutions that kind of still works in the United States. Meanwhile, what doesn't seem to work is our judicial institutions. Why not? Because President Trump will eagerly prosecute his political enemies, no matter how guiltless they may be, and he will happily pardon all his political allies, no matter how guilty they may be. CNN reports, and regardless of what you think of the source, think about what is being reported, which is that President Trump has pardoned a long list of his political allies for their support or involvement in alleged plans to overturn the 2020 presidential election, according to the Justice Department's pardon attorney. The list contains dozens of names, including high-profile figures like Trump lawyers Rudy Giuliani, Sidney Powell, and the president's former chief of staff, Mark Meadows. Each of them was charged with election interference in Georgia for trying to subvert Trump's 2020 defeat. Notably, presidential pardons only apply to federal charges, not to state or to local charges. In other words, if people are accused under Georgia state law for trying to steal that 11,000 votes plus a few hundred more from Georgia, if they were attempting to do that, that's a Georgia law, and the President of the United States does not have the power to issue a pardon. And concerning President Trump's history on this, defamation judgment, U.S. District Judge Louis Lyman found Rudy Giuliani liable for defaming two Georgia election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss, which resulted in a nearly $148 million in damages against Rudy Giuliani. Judge Lyman later held Giuliani in contempt of court for failing to properly turn over assets to satisfy the judgment and ordered him to surrender his Manhattan apartment and other property. Bankruptcy case, U.S. Bankruptcy Judge Sean Lane dismissed Giuliani's bankruptcy case, calling him a recalcitrant debtor who thumbed his nose at the court process. This dismissal allowed the election workers to pursue Giuliani's assets directly, and disbarment, separate state court decisions in New York and Washington, D.C., resulted in Giuliani's disbarment from practicing law due to his frivolous and destructive efforts to overturn the 2020 election results. This whole idea of overturning election results is profoundly disturbing. So what about the reactions to the end of the government shutdown, the longest one in our history? We will get to that. Judgments on the left seem to be more negative than those on the Trump or conservative side. We will get to that and more coming up on the MedVet Show. And who wins with the end of the shutdown? And the answer, it seems to me, is obvious. The real winner is the American public. The real winner is the American taxpayer. The real winner is you and me. There are a lot of people out there who will look at how upset Charles Schumer is, how upset Bernie Sanders is, how angry so many of the Democrats in the U.S. Senate and the U.S. House seem to be, and say, oh boy, there's another Trump victory. The truth of the matter is that this is not even a partisan question. And when you look back at the shutdown now, and you look back on the dislocation and the chaos and the confusion and the embarrassment that this shutdown for more than a month caused, what was achieved? And if this is supposed to be a big win for President Trump and the Republicans, what did they win? President Trump's approval ratings have never been lower. They're not dramatically lower, but they're still down in the dumps and the lowest ever for a president at this time of his term. And they published a listing of the top 15 polls and an average of the 494 polls. This is published by the New York Times. And if you look at all of the polling, there is no polling where Trump has a positive approval rating, none. The closest he comes is from Emerson College, conducted November 3rd to 4th, where 41% approve of his performance as president, 49% disapprove. This achieved nothing, the shutdown, nothing politically, and certainly nothing substantively in making the country better. Many of those people who were fired by President Trump or laid off really are now going to be repaid. And what it causes is inconvenience for them and saves no money for the government, which is just as broke and just as negative as it has been. But that doesn't stop Bernie Sanders from being outraged. He recorded a video showing the old guy walking in the halls of the Capitol, and he posted the video to the web. Here is the senator from Vermont, the independent, non-Democrat senator from Vermont, clip 12.
Tonight, 8 Democrats voted with the Republicans to allow them to go forward on this continuing resolution. And to my mind, this was a very, very bad vote. What it does, first of all, is it raises healthcare premiums for over 20 million Americans by doubling, and in some cases tripling or quadrupling. People can't afford that when we are already paying the highest prices in the world for healthcare. Number two, it paves the way for 15 million people to be thrown off of Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Studies show that will mean that some 50,000 Americans will die every year unnecessarily. And all of that was done to give $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1%. As everybody knows, just on Tuesday, we had an election all over this country. And what the election showed is that the American people want us to stand up to Trumpism.
Okay, but what does that mean? The Democrats, including the 8 Democratic senators who voted to give that 60% majority that they needed, they all want to do something about maintaining the subsidies to Obamacare to protect and prevent the dire events and developments and unnecessary deaths that Bernie Sanders is talking about. And the idea is that they're going to have a vote on that and to decide that after the government has been restarted. And one of the positions that John Thune, who has been leading the negotiations here, he is the Republican leader in the U.S. Senate, and he deserves a lot of credit for getting this done at this point. But what he agreed to is to, some of the Democrats would deride it as a pinky promise, to allow a direct vote on the ACA subsidies some point before January. And the position of the Republicans has been consistently, and this is President Trump's position too, that they will only negotiate with the Democrats on this issue, the issue of the Americans Care Act, that they will only negotiate once the government has restarted. Well, now let's see if they keep that promise and they can get the renegotiations done in a way that you don't have 20 million Americans losing their insurance or unable to pay their health care premiums. There was an MSNBC panel with Dean Obeidallah, who's been a guest on this show, with Democrats accused of caving in to get the government open. Here is Dean Obeidallah on MSNBC, clip 15.
It seems like the president is kind of getting what he wanted 40 days ago when all this started. He was out there saying that, oh, this is all about Democrats trying to give health care to illegal immigrants. He just said that to reporters moments ago, repeated that refrain that Democrats had actually very successfully pushed back against. Then there's all this energy. In the wake of the election on Tuesday, the president made remarks saying basically, wow, Republicans are being harmed by all of this, acknowledging that he was on his back foot. And now here he is winning again? How did he do it?
The Democrats, I don't understand how a Democratic senator goes, wow, we won really big. Let me cave now. I don't understand. That makes no sense to me.
Well, maybe to be, to Anthony's point, if they were cynical, like if we wanted just to hold this out until we get through the election.
Okay, the idea being that maybe those 8 Democratic senators did what I think they should have done and should have done a long time ago, which is put the interests of the country ahead of their political standing at the moment. It's a long time. It's a full year almost before the midterm elections. Coming up, we'll take a look at 2 members of Congress who seem to be on the point of almost physical violence, with one telling the other, and the one is in Democratic leadership, why don't you just keep your mouth shut? And then also the idea that the GOP was critical of the Democratic proposal to open the government. And the result from Trump, this is all criticized by the senator from California, Senator Adam Schiff. We will get to that as well. We also are going to be speaking about Hakeem Jeffries trying to indicate that no, this wasn't some defeat for the Democrats. Actually, it should be a defeat for everybody who was involved in this extended, almost 40 days government shutdown. But the fact that it's over could give at least a little bit of grounds for celebration, it would seem to me. More coming up on the Medved Show. And on the Michael Medved Show, Representative Mike Lawler, who is a moderate Republican from New York State, confronted the minority leader of the U.S. House. The House members are all straggling back to D.C. to vote their approval, and their approval seems to be almost certain, of the compromised deal that sends the American people and the American government back to work. In any event, Mike Lawler confronted Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries outside his office. And the discussion between these two, the Democratic leader of the House and a Republican member of the GOP caucus, this confrontation got spirited right away. Clip 14.
You're an embarrassment. You could sign on to the bill.
Let me ask you a question.
You have 4 Democrats on here.
Let me ask you a question.
It's a clean extension for 1 year.
You voted for the one big ugly bill, correct?
I voted for a tax cut bill that gave the largest tax cut
The
to
largest-
Americans in history,
the
including,
largest-
by the way, the average New Yorker getting a $4,000 tax cut. Are you against that?
You're embarrassing
Do you wanna,
yourself right
you want
now.
to cut the standard deduction in
The
half?
largest
Is that what
cut
you
to
wanna do?
Medicaid in
No, we
American
rooted
history.
out
You
waste,
voted for that.
fraud, and abuse, by the
You
way.
voted
Tom DiNapoli, the
for a
Democratic
permanent-
controller of New York,
Let me ask you a question.
pointed out that $1.2
If
billion
you're gonna
wasted.
listen, you're not gonna talk. You're not gonna talk to me.
Wasted
You're not gonna
on
talk to me
fraud
and talk
and
over
non-New
me
York residents
because you don't
getting
want to
paid.
hear what I have to say.
Oh, I'm listening.
So why don't
Go
you
ahead.
just keep your mouth shut?
Oh,
Because you
is
showed
that-
up.
is that the way to
You
talk?
showed up. You showed up.
Yeah.
And so you voted for this one big
I signed
ugly
on to
bill.
this. You can extend it
A
right now.
permanent extension of massive tax breaks for your billionaire donors.
So 90.
Okay, again, you're talking about tax breaks, and it doesn't really count as a tax break. It's like a bribe to the public to hopefully raise his approval ratings. This idea that President Trump is still kicking around, despite the disapproval of his own press secretary, his own Treasury secretary, this idea of $2,000 for every Americans. In fact, the Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, was on ABC this week, and the Treasury Secretary in the Trump cabinet was a little bit skeptical about that idea of the $2,000 tariff dividend vow. And suggesting maybe a different way to approach that now fading promise. This is clip 10.
Do you have a formal proposal to give a $2,000 dividend to every American?
I haven't spoken to the president about this yet, but it could. The $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms, in lots of ways, George. It could be just the tax decreases that we are seeing on the president's agenda. No tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, deductibility of auto loans. So, those are substantial deductions that, are being financed in the tax bill.
But the $2,000 gift to every American, another member of the Trump cabinet, the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, was on Fox News over the weekend, and she came pretty close to basically heaping some scorn on the idea of a $2,000 a person tax giveaway. This is Brooke Rollins on Fox News, clip 6.
Well, so last night, just to very quickly summarize for everyone, the Constitution, basically the executive branch takes the money from from Congress, from the legislative branch. This goes back to the very beginning. We just can't create money out of the sky. That's not how the United States work. It's interesting, the No Kings rally, right, where they said, we don't want a king in America, except now they want a king that can create money out of the sky, the clear blue sky. And so a very leftist judge in Rhode Island said, oh, go create the money, everybody, go find it. And then the First Circuit basically agreed with that. But last night, y'all, Judge Ketanji Brown, no great friend of, free market and constitutional government, said, no, we need to stay this for 48 hours. The First Circuit needs to take another good look at this, that this probably is not constitutional. You can't just create money to fund a program that Congress refuses to fund.
Okay, that should give us some pause. Also, the reaction to President Trump, which we spoke about. President Trump appeared with the Washington Commanders, where they played a game against the Detroit Lions. The Lions are formidable this year, but the Commanders scored 22 points. The Lions scored 44. But in the midst of that home team loss, what the president attended produced this reaction from the crowd. Clip 5.
The 45th and 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, as the President swears in the seas of our United States
And now he tries to swear in listees to the United States military. Listen.
Please raise your right hands. I, and state your name, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against both enemies, foreign and domestic.
Okay, they were not treating President Trump. That was his voice, President Trump trying to get them to swear in. And he was just hugely booed, as you could hear. He also then spoke in the broadcast booth for just a moment and said the country is doing just great. Clip 4.
Would love to hear your thoughts about where we are as a nation, how we're doing.
Well, we're doing great, and recruitment is doing phenomenally. People have spirit. Our stock market hit an all-time high. Prices are coming down. We inherited a mess. Prices are coming way down. And I'll tell you, our country has over $17 trillion being invested in it, which is a record. So we're doing great.
Okay, we're doing great, and our prices are coming down. See, this is the wrong beach for him to fight on, really, because people experience their own visits to the supermarket. There was a concert taking place in Paris, which was interrupted by planting of flares and booing, and it's a classical music concert. They were playing Beethoven and Tchaikovsky. So why was all the booing and the violence interrupting it? Because it was the Israel Philharmonic that was playing, that had been invited to play in Paris. We will get to that and get to what John Bolton, in a terrific column, calls the most shameful day in the history of the UN. What happened on that day? There's more on that. There's also on a related subject, a very necessary and important piece by Ralph Reed, the founder, co-founder with the late Pat Robertson of the Christian Coalition. He's the head of the Coalition for Faith and Freedom. What does he have to say about that dark day in UN history and the strong support by evangelical Christians for the Jewish people and the state of Israel? We will get to those questions and more coming up in this greatest nation on God's green earth.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit LifeLock.com/podcast. Terms apply.